Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Euro 2020 fantasy football. Now, many of you will know me from my Fantasy Premier League videos, but those of you who are here for the Euros content, my name is Dan and I'll be giving you great tips and advice surrounding Euro fantasy, all presented with great graphics to make it a little bit easy to understand. I thought I'd start off with a video on how to play Euro fantasy. Some of you may think this is a pretty simple game, but there are some actually pretty interesting rules that most people don't even know of or understand, and knowing these secret rules will give you a huge advantage over your mates. So guys, I've got you covered. I'm here to help you at Euro Fantasy, so if you want regular advice and tips, hit the subscribe button, hit the like, and let's succeed together. Now, before we look at the complex stuff, we do have to go through and understand the weird and wacky rules of the game, so let's get cracking. So as of right now, it's actually pretty hard to find out how to play Euro Fantasy. There are actually two ways to play depending on whether you want to use your desktop, computer or your mobile device. Now, if you want to play on desktop, head to the official UEFA website, UEFA.com, then click on UEFA Euro 2020 at the top of the screen in that top bar. Then scroll down until you see this green box that says Fantasy Football. Click on that, and from here, you can start creating your team and join in the fun. Now, if you want to play on mobile, however, navigate to the App Store or for iPhone or Google Play Store if you're on Android. Here you must look for an app named UEFA Fantasy and Predictor Games with this icon. Once you've downloaded the app, open it up and there are two tabs, one for Champions League and one for Euro 2020. Make sure you're on that Euro tab, and once again you will see the green box that says Fantasy Football. So once again, click that box to play, and you may need to create an account or log in at this point, or you can just try it out as a guest for now. Those of you who have played Fantasy Premier League or other fantasy football games will probably be pretty familiar with this part. So on the screen you will see 15 slots. In each of these slots you must pick a player that you would like to be part of your fantasy team. These 15 players will make up your squad. These players will score you points for things like goals, assists, clean sheets, making saves if they're a goalkeeper, and your squad must contain 2 goalkeepers, 5 defenders, 5 midfielders and 3 forwards. Be careful though, each player is assigned a price between 4 million for the cheaper players all the way to 12 million for the most expensive players. You only have a budget of 100 million to work with, so budget carefully. It's kind of not possible to have a squad full of Mbappes, Ronaldos and Kanes. Just can't happen, but this is kind of part of the fun. So pick a team with some, maybe a few expensive stars, and then fill the rest of your team with some cheaper options, get some bargains in there. You know, this is the fun part, right guys? If you're planning on picking just the whole England team or something like that, maybe you just want the whole France team, afraid this is not going to be possible because you can only pick 3 players from each team in the first round. So in the first round, only 3 players from each team. As rounds progress, as we go to the round of 16 quarterfinals, the limit of how many players you're allowed from each team does increase by increments of 1. So that does change as we go deeper into the tournament, but for now, just think about 3 players from each team as an absolute maximum. You know, during this is just during the group stage anyway. So these players, they're going to score you points during each round of fixtures. A round of fixtures is called a match day. Remember that term, match day. That is what a round of fixtures is. That's a round, so kind of pick wisely here. So once you've picked your 15 players who you think will score you a lot of points, you can start arranging them into a starting 11 with 4 substitutes. Only players in your starting 11 will score you points. If a player in your starting 11 doesn't play, a player from your bench will automatically be subbed on, and in between each match day you can switch around your team, having certain players on the bench in some weeks or during some rounds of fixtures, and you can have other players playing in your other rounds as well. So just go for the player you think will score the most points and stuff like that. So typically you want to go for a slightly more attacking formation, because you can choose different formations in this game as well. So try and go for maybe a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 formation to make the most of the attacking options that you have at your disposal. And if a player from your bench is automatically subbed on, this might change your formation for the match day, but that's not really going to be an issue for you. Finally, we got to pick a captain. Now, your captain's score will be doubled each match day. So pick the player you think will score the most points. You can't have a vice captain, so you've got to pick a player who's actually going to play. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a little while. And you can, of course, change your captain each match day for someone different, and also during the match day. But we're going to talk about that a little bit. But your captain score will be doubled. No vice captains. I've mentioned before players score points based on their performances. The more score you can get from your team, the better. Now, I'll keep this pretty brief as I know this concept will be pretty familiar to most of you. Feel free to pause and look at the full list of scoring actions if you want to. But FPL players, there are some notable differences here between scoring that you're used to and scoring for Euro Fantasy. So goals outside the box from players will earn the player an additional 1 point. Winning a penalty earns a player 2 points. Whether the subsequent penalty is scored or not, it doesn't matter. You always get 2 points if you win a penalty. And if you give away a penalty, that's a -1 point for you. And aside from that, it's all pretty familiar stuff really, other than no bonus points. So remember, no bonus points either. So that's the scoring and how that works. So I've spoken a little bit about match days, but what are they? So in Euro Fantasy, a match day is a round of point scoring, a round of fixtures, exactly the same as a game week in Fantasy Premier League. So what are the match days? Well, a match day takes place over the period of time where every team who are still in the competition plays once each. So in the group stage, the first match day will contain all of the fixtures between Friday the 11th of June and Tuesday the 15th of June. By this point, every team has played once each. The second match day will contain all of the fixtures between Wednesday the 16th of June and Saturday the 19th of June. And the third match day will contain the remaining round of group stage games. And then subsequent match days will contain each round of the knockout phase. So there's a match day for the round of 16, there's a match day for the round for the quarterfinals, match day for semi-finals, and of course one match day for the final to finish us all off, which does mean indeed that on the final match day you'll only have players from 2 teams, from the 2 finalists to choose from in your fantasy team. So that's a total of 7 match days and I guess 7 round of fixtures. Between each round of fixtures, each max day, you'll be able to switch around your team, put different players on the bench and change your captain as well. But more interestingly, you'll get to make your transfers. Is there a player you put in your original team that you're no longer happy with? Is there a player who really impressed you in the last round and you want to bring him into your team? No problem, let's make a transfer. You can swap any player in your team for any other player as long as it fits within your budget. But your transfers are limited. You can only make a certain amount of transfers between each match day. And it works like this. So before the tournament starts, you can make as many transfers as you want. Go crazy, just make your perfect team, right guys? During the group stage, so between match day 1 and match day 2, and between match day 2 and match day 3, you can make 2 transfers at each of those intervals. Now, before the round of 16, you can actually make unlimited transfers and give your whole squad a refresh. So you get to start again, essentially, with your squad, keeping all of your squad, but you get to start again with your team when we come to the round of 16. Now, before the quarterfinals, you can make 3 transfers. Before the semi-finals, you can make 5 transfers. And before the final itself, you can make another 5 transfers. So in the later rounds, you get to make loads and loads and loads of transfers indeed. Now, if you don't use your transfers, you can carry over a maximum of 1 to the next round, as long as it's during the group stage. If you have more than 1 spare transfer banked, they will be gone forever, and as soon as we reach the knockout stage, you can't carry spare transfers to the next round at all. So use them or lose them. If you want to go beyond your transfer limit at each round, you can do this. However, each additional transfer used will knock 4 points off your total score. So be careful about making too many extra transfers. Otherwise, you'll just see so many points get knocked off your score and you'll quickly find yourself dropping down the leaderboard. So just like in Fantasy Premier League, Euro Fantasy has a couple of chips. 2 to be precise. Now the chips in Euro Fantasy are there kind of to bail you out of trouble. They're trying to kind of get out of jail free cards in many ways. So each chip can only be used once and can't be cancelled once you've activated it. So as soon as you've activated that chip, you got to use it. That's done. And now the first chip is called the wild card. Now the wild card allows you to make unlimited transfers for 1 match day only. If you decide you completely hate your team and you want to start over, use the wild card. Now the second one is called limitless. Now for those of you who've played FPL, this chip is exactly the same as a free hit chip. Basically, once you activate limitless, you can make as many transfers as you like for 1 match day only. However, once the match day is over, your team will revert to whatever it looked like before you play the limitless chip. So basically, it allows you to have whatever team you want for 1 match day only, and then it reverts you back to your old squad. Now, this chip should be used when you quite like your squad in general, but it's not quite set up for exactly how you'd like it to be for this particular match day. So it kind of lets you off the hook for 1 week only, and then we're back using your old squad that you had before once again. Now, this is a rule that a lot of people don't actually know about. This isn't exactly helped by the fact that Euro Fantasy, on their official website, on the English version, they've actually written the rule incorrectly as well. So that's why this rule is a bit of a mystery, but I'm here to try and help you out, clear it up a little bit with the help of some graphics, I'm sure. Now, this is the way in which Euro Fantasy is the most different from Fantasy Premier League. Now, just knowing about this feature will give you a huge advantage over other players in the game, because most people just ignore it. And the feature is you can make live changes to your team in the middle of a match day during periods that we like to call substitution windows. You can't make transfers during these substitution windows, but you can make substitutions and swap players from your bench with players on your pitch. You can also switch your captains too, so you can just mix things up. As long as you stay within your squad, you're not making transfers, you can mix things up as things go along. So here's how it works. If you have a squad of 15 players, you can obviously only play 11. However, if one of your players from your starting 11 gets a rubbish score, you're not very happy with their score, maybe he doesn't play at all, you can swap him out with a player who is on your bench who hasn't played yet. They have to be a player who hasn't played yet. So as long as the player on your bench hasn't played yet, you swap them on. Since you have 4 substitutes, you can do this a maximum of 4 times throughout the match day. You can kind of make these substitutions during, like I said, the substitution windows. Now, these substitution windows will take place at the point between the end of the fixtures on one day and the beginning of the fixtures of another day, kind of as shown on screen. So these are your substitution windows. Obviously, they're going to be in different time zones depending on where you are in the world. This is how it works. So, for example, during match day 1, the first day of the games is Friday the 11th of June. We've got Turkey versus Italy there. After this game is done, you can make substitutions until Wales versus Switzerland kicks off the next day on the Saturday. Then you won't be able to make any substitutions again until the Belgium versus Russia game finishes. Then, once again, you can start making substitutions until England versus Croatia kicks off. And so on and so forth, all the way through for every single match day. Now, another note is if you make a substitution, automatic substitutions, which happen if you don't touch anything, automatic substitutions, they no longer take effect, so you have to do your substitutions manually. As soon as you do the first manual substitution, you have to do all of them manually. Now, the best way to take advantage of this rule is to fill your starting 11 with players who play their fixtures early on in the match day, and leave the players who play their games late on in the match day on the bench, ready for later, ready to sub on if all of your first 11 disappoint you. Because they haven't played yet, the guys on your bench, you still have the opportunity to switch them on right the way really late on in the match day. So definitely something you want to do. You can kind of, one of your players gets 0 points or 1 point or 2 points. You can have a second roll of the dice and switch them out for one of your bench players. Now, for this reason, it's kind of recommended to have a strong full squad of 15 players. So don't scrimp on the bench. Make a full 15 squad of some really, really strong players that you like. Then, if something goes wrong during the round of fixtures, you just swap out a player for one of your equally strong guys on the bench. It basically gives you 4 second chances to score points if you kind of play this way. And once you've subbed out a player, though, that's final. You can't switch them back. If you sub a player out as the replacement scores even less points, that's kind of too bad. You're stuck with the replacement player that you brought on from your bench. So, as I said, only use this tactic to switch out players with those incredibly low scores. I wouldn't take a risk on a player who just got an assist or just got a goal. Just leave them in your team and actually just switch out the players who only score 1 or 2 points, or maybe even 0. The live captain change rule follows a similar concept, allowing you to change your mind on who you want to captain during each substitution window. So obviously, you select your captain before the beginning of the match day. However, you can change your mind and actually switch your captain to another player who is yet to play during any of these periods of time between the end of the fixtures of one day and the beginning of the fixtures on the next day. So in this example, match day 1 or round 1, Turkey versus Italy is the only game on the first day of the match day, on Friday, obviously. After that game was completed, the next match day is Saturday. And the first game on the second day is Wales versus Switzerland. So after the Turkey versus Italy game and before the Wales versus Switzerland game, during this time period, you can switch your captain to someone else who hasn't played yet. You can keep doing this every single day. It's sort of a stick or twist type game. You just keep going until you're happy with the player that you've captained. Now, the way to take advantage of this rule is to captain a player who plays on the first match day. So in match day 1, this would be a player in the Turkey versus Italy game. So captain someone from Turkey versus Italy. Then if that captain performs poorly, you make the switch to someone who's playing the next day. And then if they perform poorly, make another switch to someone playing the next day, and so on and so forth. If your captain for one of those teams, one of those games actually performs really well, then that's fantastic. You can just stick with that captain and stop rolling your captain to the next player. But if you're a little bit disappointed at each event by your captain's score, you can keep switching it up over and over and over again until you get to the last day, and then I guess you'll be stuck to the player on the last day. But yeah, you can keep switching it up, going for a different captain if you change your mind, and I'm sure a lot of us will be constantly changing our mind as we progress through the game week. So make sure that your next captain will outscore the previous one, with all of this taking place within one round. It's a really, really, really useful rule to know. So with those two live rules, this makes Euro Fantasy much more of a live and kind of constant experience, a much more immersive experience which you're in constantly every single day, rather than just setting your team and forgetting about it for a week. You are in it constantly. Now, a lot of players won't even bother making these with these additional rules, making these additional switches during the week. As you know, it's a little bit time consuming, I get that, but if you really want to beat your mates, making live substitutions and captain switches in the middle of a match day can be a great way to actually achieve this. Now, I know these rules are kind of complicated. I hope some of you now understand how it works, but if you don't get it yet fully, don't worry, I am going to make an entirely separate video on these two rules and how best to use them tactically to gain the upper hand on your mates. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I know I didn't cover every single minor rule in the game, but hopefully I covered most of the basics and the most important rules. If there's anything you would like me to talk about or explain further, please let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to make a video on pretty much whatever you want me to make around the Euros Fantasy. I've got a few ideas already, but if you want me to do some additional stuff, I'm always open to your ideas, and I'll perhaps even give you some credit in the video as well. So please like the video if you found it useful. It really keeps the channel going, really helps out. And of course, subscribe if you're looking for daily Euro Fantasy content, because there's going to be loads on this channel. Don't worry about that. I'll be here all the way through June and July giving you the best tips and advice for this game. Also, I'm going to be pretty active on Twitter, so feel free to drop me a follow over there at FPL, mate. We'll be talking about some Euro Fantasy over there. And aside from that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.